A lot of producers ruin their mixes before they even get started because they're setting their reverbs completely wrong. But there's one simple trick that fixed that for me, and it's called the Invisible Reverb Technique. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to set your reverbs in a special way so that they'll sit at the perfect level and translate all the way through mastering. I'm going to walk you through 3 different versions of this technique: beginner, intermediate, and pro, so that you can use it no matter what skill level you're at. And when you apply this, your mixes will immediately take on this sense of spaciousness, of polish, and they'll have this unmistakable ear candy that you might recognize from some of your favorite tracks. Let's go. So why do people have such a hard time setting reverbs? Well, there's 2 big reasons. The first has to do with the room or the studio that you're listening in. Every room has a natural decay time. And if you're not in a heavily acoustically treated room like I am, then your room's decay time is likely as long or longer than the reverb that you're trying to set for your song. And you're hearing the room as much or more than the reverb that you're trying to set, which confuses your ability to set all the various fussy parameters in that reverb. The next thing that it'll get you to do is likely, because of the masking effect, you're going to jack up the level of the reverb to the point where you can really hear it on top of your room, which means that the final reverb sound is going to be way too loud in your mix because you need to swamp out your room's natural decay. To quickly demonstrate this, let's get out of the studio and I'm going to take you into a more reflective space. Let's listen to that same test in this control room. So the fix for this is use headphones. Headphones have a naturally very, very, very tight decay. And if you're not going to go to the trouble yet of acoustically treating your room, headphones are the best option for that. You'll be able to set your reverbs with much more precision. That's the first problem. The second issue that prevents people from properly setting reverbs is that when you're setting your reverb level, you're doing it in mixing when everything's quieter and there's much more dynamic range. But once you get into mastering and compression and a lot more limiting is typically applied, then what that does is it brings up the level of all of the quietest things in the mix relative to the loudest things in the mix. And reverb tails tend to be some of the quietest things in the mix. So the reverb level that sounded right to you when you were mixing is now way over the top, swampy, muddy, messy once you make it through mastering. And this is exactly why the Invisible Reverb Technique is a total game changer. Let me show you how to set it up. I've got a project all spooled up for us to work inside of. Let's check it out. So this is pretty bone dry because I've intentionally removed all the reverbs from the project and I've muted any synths that have long decays. And I have done that so we can really hear the differences that we're creating by adding in a bit of reverb. We're going to go down to the return track here where I've got an instance of Temperance Pro, the new reverb from Eventide. And I've chosen this reverb because it has a super unique and innovative power feature that I've never seen in a reverb before. And it's going to come into play in the Pro Level 3 version of this technique. So stay tuned. But for now, we're just going to use the more basic functions of it. And we're going to set up what I would call an ambiance or a vibe reverb, a very short reverb that's just meant to add a little sense of acoustic gel around things to help everything feel like it's in the same space. If you want to follow along, there's a link to Temperance Pro below in the video description, and there's a fully functional 14-day free trial. Also note that you can start with Temperance Lite and then upgrade to Pro anytime. So what we're going to do is we're going to browse the algorithms, and I'm going to look for something that is super, super small, 200-300 milliseconds. And you can see as I hover my mouse over the different algorithms, the default decay time shows, which is so helpful. So I'm going to go back here to small cabin. I'm going to take the size, drop it all the way to the lowest value it can go. Mix is all the way up at 100% because it's a return. And I'm going to add just a little bit of pre-delay. The pre-delay, especially on percussive elements like drums, is going to help us out because it allows the transient of the drum to be very clear and clean. And then the onset of the reverb happens just a little bit after that, but not so far that you hear it as a distinct echo. Okay, let's dial that in. We'll solo the drums. We'll send up some signal. And let's check this out. One of the things I really like about this reverb is you can go and you can turn sync on, and then you can set the pre-delay to musical values. Really cool. But in this case, I want it so short that I'm going to be using milliseconds. So let's get that dialed in. Okay, that's a good starting point. Now, the essence of the invisible reverb technique. What you do is you start with the send down and you begin to turn it up to the point where you really hear the reverb on top of the signal. You're really hearing it in there. You're like, yeah, that's got reverb on it. Let's do that. So there, right? We're really hearing the reverb. Okay. Then what you do is we're going to bring the send back to 0. We're going to bring it up again, and we're going to listen for when we just barely start to notice it. Okay, you hear that? And again, this is where you need to be wearing headphones if you're not in a really, really tight acoustic space that has that short decay time. If the decay time in your room is 300 milliseconds or more, you might have a masking effect on this and not really be able to hear it. Okay, so hearing it is the important first step. Now, -13, -12, that's when I really start to hear, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm starting to hear the reverb come in, but it's not on top yet. Okay, next step. Back it off a little bit, 10%, a few dB. We're going to back it off and we're going to tuck it under, just underneath the threshold of perceivability. You want it there, but you don't want to hear it as reverb. Okay, so we're just going to back it off a few dB. Okay, and the Goldilocks zone for this, the real sweet spot, is where you don't hear it when it's in, but you hear it when it's missing. You're really like, oh, that lost something. So I'm going to play it for you now, and I really want you to listen carefully. We'll start with the reverb on, and then I'm just going to mute the return track so it goes away. I want you to listen for the difference as I put it in and I take it out. And there it is. Do you hear how the mix falls apart? And you lose that sense of sheen that it has, that sense of cohesion or gel? As soon as that reverb goes away, it's holding everything together. And as soon as it's gone, the snare starts to sound like it's on top of the mix. The hi-hats sound like they just got pulled out of a sample pack and they just don't belong with everything else. And that is really what this particular gel or ambiance reverb does. Okay, we can go further. This is level 1. I'll see you in level 2. The next level of this technique involves making the reverb more transparent. So what I've done is I have taken the reverb from level 1 and I've pasted it onto a new return. And then what I've done is I've gone through the whole project and I've sent up level from everything except the sub to this new return. So here's what we have. I want you to listen carefully with it on and off. So let's go ahead and dial in some additional settings that will help this reverb to blend in even more. And this is where I'm going to use another one of the amazing features on this reverb, which is the A and B compare states. Now, for some reason, a lot of plugins don't have this. A lot do, but a lot of plugins don't. And I just have a hard time using ones that don't when I'm mixing, because oftentimes I'm comparing settings that are very subtle. And in order to be able to determine which one is the best setting, I need to be able to flip back and forth very quickly. And the A-B settings lets me do that. So what we're going to do is leave in the A state. the original settings of the reverb, and I'm going to flip that over to B, and that's going to be our new settings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this position knob, and I'm going to bias it down towards early reflections. Now, that's going to make us feel like we're closer to the sound. It gives the perception of being closer to the source. And every reverb is comprised of two different types of calculations. If it's an algorithmic reverb, early reflections, which are off of objects that are close to you, especially like your boundaries, like walls and ceilings, and late energy, which is the diffuse, kind of densely packed, blurry, smeary tail that you oftentimes hear as a reverb tail. So we're just going to prioritize and bias towards the early reflections. And then we're going to just trim the reverb return up. We're going to band pass it in using the cut filters. So it has a high pass and low pass filter like you'd expect from a lot of reverbs. We have control over the slope. I'm going to give it a nice gentle slope. I'm going to bring this up. You can type in exact values, which my OCD loves, and we'll just band pass the reverb in. 140, 6K. Okay, that's going to be our, there we go. The B state is going to be the original, and the A state is going to be our modified settings. So now let's listen, and I'll flip back and forth between those two. Let's solo up the drums because we'd been listening to those before. And let's just do that again so you can hear with a more exposed sound source. Awesome. So with those two simple settings changes, we've allowed the reverb to sit in the mix much more nicely by targeting it on the mid-range and focusing it on the early reflections. Now let's level things up with the final evolution of this technique. Now we'll reveal what sets Temperance apart from other reverbs, and that's the temper feature. So imagine your reverb as a collection of individual sine wave pure tone partials, and you're able to use those to construct any psychoacoustic space that you want to. That's what you would call a modal reverb, and that's exactly what Temperance is doing. Kind of like this. Note that these aren't sound generators like synth oscillators. They're tuned filters that are working on the audio that's already there in the processed signal. The huge benefit that this creates is that it allows you to target Temperance on specific musical notes. It's an in-key melodic and harmonic reverb. So our theme that we've been going with in the level 2 of this technique was to make the reverb more transparent. Well, imagine if instead of just band passing the reverb in, we're able to target its reflections and decay in on musical notes that are relevant for our melody in this song. So let's have a listen. What I've done is I've again taken where we ended up in level 2. I've copied that reverb over to a new send. Everything is sent up to it at the same amount. And what I'm going to do is in the B state of the reverb, I'm going to target using the temper feature. So you can see we have these musical note values down here. We can also see they show up in the what's called the notescape view up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it play the root note, the bass note of the song, which is F. And then I'm going to have it play some of the notes from the vocal melody, C, G sharp, and A sharp. It's not going to do anything until we turn the temper parameter up. So let's have a listen as we do that. Okay, I like this feature as well, the output. It allows me, when I really want to put the reverb on top for emphasis, like in an example like this, or if I don't want to change my send level from everything that underpins the mix, I can just adjust this output slider up to 12 dB up. So I've put this effect really right on top so you can hear it. And let's A/B that with the original. So the original normal reverb, I'm going to also push up by 12 dB. Let's go back and forth. So the reverb effect itself is thinner, which is definitely going to be more transparent, but it also has a distinct melodic, harmonic ringiness to it. It's really on top, so we wouldn't leave it at these types of levels, but like the creative possibilities with that in a mix or for sound design are mind-blowing. So I'm going to show you through a couple of extra features, and this is not a comprehensive tutorial. There are so many more things that this reverb can do that I don't have time for in this particular video, such as the sequencing tab or MIDI input. So I'm just going to focus on the simplest implementation of this as it relates to the Invisible Reverb Technique. Note width. Let's talk about that. So you can see that each one of these notes where it's focusing the energy has a bandwidth to it, a thickness, a width. And if you turn up note width, you can see it thickens those out. So it's just adding more of the sine wave ringing partials so that it doesn't have as thin or a ringy feel to it. Okay, let's play with that a little bit. Yeah, I definitely like that a little bit north of its default, making them a little bit thicker. Okay, now temper is at 100. The astute amongst you will have noticed that you can also take it negative. What is this doing? Okay, what this is doing is it's taking the notes that you've plugged in and it is excluding those from the reverb effect. So it's making space, say, if you had a tonal element. Let's listen to what that sounds like when we bounce back and forth between the positive and negative values. Amazing. Okay, I don't like it at 100%. I like it a little bit south of that. Now, you can take this even further and you can target the temper effect on all of the reverb effect or just the early or just the late energy. And you'll notice that the color of the UI changes, which is nice, so you can see exactly where you're targeting. So we have the position all the way biased towards the early reflections. What happens if we start to blend in a little bit of the late energy here? Let's go ahead and target it on all. I'm going to bring in some late energy, and then I'm going to target it on just the early reflections and then just the late energy so you can hear that difference. Unreal. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the extra boost that we did here on both sides of the AB. And now I'm going to tuck this in a way that I would realistically process this in a project, okay? So I'm going to start by targeting here, and we're going to leave it in the middle, and we're going to finesse the settings and see if we can get it even more transparent and melodic than the version that we had before in level 2. Awesome. I felt the way that I finessed the settings and was able to target the reverb so it wasn't quite as dense. I was able to target it on those relevant musical notes. I felt at that point I was actually able to increase the decay a little bit and it didn't need to be quite as short. So there is level 3. Now, up until this point, we've been focusing on this very short ambient style of reverb, but I want to do a quick additional demo for you of what this temper feature sounds like on something that's a little bit more lush. And I'm really missing reverb on the vocal. The vocal in this track sounds just too dry for me. Let's experiment next with adding temperance onto the lead vocal. So I've taken a few minutes and gotten Temperance Pro all dialed in on the vocal group of the song in the verse so we can hear a different section of the piece. I'll play it with the reverb in and then bypass it so you can hear the difference.
Sing me a song, this is where I belong, where I belong, where I belong. But we were so young, so let's stay strong and carry on.
Sweet. Let's take a look at the settings that I used. I followed all of the steps in the Invisible Reverb process that we went through in level 3, and this is where I ended up. You can see I've switched the algorithm. I'm using the large synthetic space. And if we look at the decay, we are able to tuck in nearly a 6-second reverb into this project without it sounding swampy and masky on everything else, okay? And that has everything to do with how this has been set up. So what I've done is I've targeted the C, F, G sharp, A sharp, just like we did with the previous example. I'm using the temper at a value of 50. I've jacked up the note width so they're nice and thick. It's not sounding thin and ringy like it can if you reduce the note width. I'm allowing a nice even balance of early and late energy. So it's sounding more like a traditional reverb versus just this really tight ambience. And I've increased the decay. I have added the feature we saw before, which is the rhythmic snapping of the pre-delay to a 30-second note. I'm using the band passing filters, the cut filters in the reverb at 130 and 2K, so it's really targeted in on the mid-range of the vocal. And then I'm using these additional handles right here, which will focus the range of the temper feature just within the same range as the cut filters. So there it is, all adding in together. And now I want you to hear the full impact of Temperance and all of the Invisible Reverb Technique on the whole project. So I've set up a hotkey to be able to disable all of the reverb that Temperance is providing and then activate it all at the same time. So let's have a listen to the cumulative impact of what we've done with our process here.
Sing me a song, this is where I belong, where I belong, where I belong. But we were so young, so let's stay strong and carry on. Lifting me higher.
To hear how the Temperance feature can transform your mix when pushed more aggressively, let's give it one last pass and really exaggerate the settings.
Sing me a song, this is where I belong, where I belong, where I belong. But we were so young, so let's stay strong and carry on. Let's get lost together, feel so surreal, as I walk forever in this daydream. And I feel like this is quite alright, till you realize this is not paradise.
Let's do a quick recap of the Invisible Reverb Technique so that you can really have this sink in. The first step is to raise the reverb level until you really hear it overtly on top. And you acclimate your ears so that you can hear what that reverb sounds like in your particular mix. Then you back off the send level and you increase it again to the point where you just begin to barely perceive the reverb. So you go gradually. Once you hear the reverb coming in just a little bit, then you back it off 10%, a few dB, and you tuck it just underneath the perceivability threshold. That is the process. I hope this serves you really well going forwards. It's helped me a lot to get my mixes to sound nice and lush and spacious and gel, that nice sense of cohesion, that nice sense of vibe and ear candy, without ever sounding swampy or muddy or masked. I wanted to give a quick shout out and acknowledgement to my friend Timofey Reznikov, the double Grammy-nominated producer, mix, and mastering engineer for David Guetta. When I was chatting with Timofey recently, he shared this technique of using a very short ambiance reverb on pretty much everything in the song, and I loved it so much I wanted to be able to showcase it in the video for you. So thanks, Timofey. So there you have it, folks. The Invisible Reverb Technique, and an introduction to Temperance Pro and some of the creative mixing possibilities that it enables. Drop me a comment below and let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you thought about this video, and if you've ever tried anything like this in your own music. There's a link below in the video description to grab Temperance Pro, or at least check out that fully functional 14-day free trial. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you liked this one, and I'll see you again soon.